Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Twin Bill Baseball Podcast. I'm What a Day Joe, joined by the player and, of course, special guest Dan, the smartest man in the room. He's always the smartest man in the room. And we are talking today about the greatest teams of all time. Probably a very opinionated segment coming up. I can probably tell you that much. But hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving weekend. It feels like it was like the longest weekend for some reason. I don't know
Yes,
why.
absolutely.
I don't know if it's the moon and the stars or whatever, but I feel like I've been off for like 6 days, but it's been crazy.
I've been on a food bender, but I'm kind of off
Yeah.
it now.
Food coma. Yeah, that's
Yep.
always a good thing, right? Dan, did you have turkey?
Actually, no. I made
No.
prime rib this year.
Oh
Prime,
wow,
nice. Fresh cut prime rib.
Oh yes, yeah, carved it myself.
medium rare.
Nice.
Medium
Got
rare.
to be. If you're slow roasting prime rib, it's got to be medium rare.
Oh my God.
You see any brown in a prime rib, you did it wrong.
So
Did
if I went to a good restaurant and I ordered well done prime rib, would I get like the chef in Caddyshack with the coming out with the hatchet?
You guys will hate me because I love my meat well done.
Oh God, no, I like mine burnt, Joe.
When I get the prime rib, I ask for the end cut because I know it's probably cooked.
Yeah.
See, now the end cut of a prime rib is a little different. You get like a sirloin or a strip steak and ask for
Right.
it well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that point you're
Yeah.
as Hank Hill said, ask them politely and firmly to leave.
Yep.
Yeah. I've had chefs come out and tell me you do not want to cook this piece of meat well done, whether it's filet or whatever. There's 50-day aged lamb or something like that. But nonetheless, all right, Thanksgiving behind us now, Christmas looking ahead. But today we're talking the greatest teams of all time. Benny, again, you sent an email out, and I got pages and pages of numbers
I'm
and
the
stats
hardest working
here.
guy in podcasting. What can I say?
I can't wait for you to do my taxes this year. That's one thing I'm looking forward to. But nonetheless, I'm gonna let the player kick this thing off here. Let's go for it. Jump right in. What do you want to do?
Well, I maybe we go around and do our top 2 or 3 teams, and then
Okay.
maybe we go back and forth and defend our case. So I guess I'm going to be first. I'm going to do the number 3 team as the 1970 Baltimore Orioles.
Ooh.
I'm
Okay.
going to do the second team as, and Dan and I think are going to debate this one. The second team as the 1939 Yankees, and the number 1 team is Murderers Row, the 1927 Yankees.
Yeah, 27 Yankees. That was huge. Dan, what do you got? Top 3? Top 2?
Benny hit it right on the head because he and I, when he pitched the idea of the show to me and we started talking, I remember we were debating over the Yankees because obviously I have the 1970 Orioles as my number 2.
Okay.
My number 3 was the 1975 Reds.
Oh yeah.
And this is where Benny and I disagreed because he was pitching 27, and I picked the number 1 as the 39 Yankees.
Wow. So you left the 27 Yankees out of the top 3 altogether.
Well, I didn't. I figure we were all picking different ones. That's why.
Oh, all right. Okay.
They would definitely bump to 75 Reds if we were allowed to pick different. But when I said 39 and you were like, oh, it's 20, was it 60? You said 98, 60.
I said 61, 98, and 27.
That's
but
right.
I have to thank you because the 39 Yankees I thought were a great team. But when I actually, then I drilled down and I did some analysis. Yeah, they're top of the heap, or at least 1 or 2.
The 39 Yankees. You saw them play, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was in high school. I'm like,
there you go. I kept mine simple. I just narrowed it down to the 2. I mean, I love the 27 Yankees, Murderers Row, and all that stuff. A lot of history with that and so forth. But coming from the Northeast and all that, I had to kick mine off with the 86 Red Sox. I mean, I was right there with the rest of Red Sox Nation about to pour that glorious glass of champagne, 1 strike away, and the wheels come falling off. So that, at 16 years old, I got my first real taste of heartache. And then, of course, the 2004 Red Sox. They finally ended that 86-year drought. The curse of the Bambino was lifted finally, and I don't know if I think I mentioned this before on the previous podcast, but the curse of the Bambino kind of originated with a couple of retired Red Sox numbers at Fenway Park. I do believe it was Ted Williams, number 9, Bobby Dorr, number 4, Pesky, I think it was 1, and 8 was Yastrzemski. And they put those numbers up at Fenway 9418. September 4th, 1918 was the last time the Red Sox won the World Series. So what happened is the year before they started retiring other people's numbers instead of throwing. I think Carlton Fisk got up there with 20. So they kind of unscrambled the numbers a little bit. And then miraculously, in 2004, yeah, it happens. They finally ended that drought. They were they were a bunch of idiots. That is for sure. They were a bunch. They had that Moneyball mentality where they went out and got a bunch of close to has-beens or no names. The likes of Damon. Guys that we didn't even know at the time before they got big. Kevin Millar. I didn't even know who Kevin Millar was.
You knew Damon if you were an A's fan.
An A's fan, right? Exactly. And that's funny. And during those time frames, because the year before in 03, Wakefield gave up the home run to Aaron Boone, and that ruined our chances there. But to get to these pennant, we always played the A's. It was like 3 years in a row, the Red Sox and the A's went at it, and it was either somebody was on the team before or vice versa, and it was very weird psychosis there. If that's the word I'm looking for, but very strange dynamic with that. But my thing with the 2004 Red Sox, I don't know if you ever seen the specials on, but it all started with Kevin Millar getting on base, and then the pinch run for Dave Roberts. He comes on, and it starts with a wink of an eye. There was no signs or anything for him to steal second base in the 9th inning with 2 outs. They were literally 1 out away from ending this, and he looked at Terry Francona and just winked at him. And Terry just said, go for it. And no signs were given. That's, and he just barely beat the tag, And then, of course, Bill Miller singled up the middle, and the rest is history, And then the biggest comeback in baseball. It's funny when you Google this stuff, they talk about the Yankees' biggest choke, but no one talks about the greatest comeback. The next 3 games went into like 2 a.m. extra innings.
Right.
They did. And I mean that because that was the first time they were down. I mean, that was the first time anybody had ever come back down 3-1 and won not just the A series period, but the ALCS. I mean,
yeah, it was crazy. I mean, you had what's his name? Mariano Rivera was lights out every time we played him. And for some reason, and I do believe the moon had something to do with it too, because they won. They ended up winning the World Series, obviously, over St. Louis, but it was under a full moon type thing. There's a lot of crazy things. The bloody sock, the whole kit and caboodle. You throw all this stuff in there, and that's like that magic thing that happened. There were no great power hitters on the Red Sox in '86. I mean, I'm sorry, in 2004. It just wasn't that. We had Manny Ramirez. I don't think he hit more than 40-something home runs. And he was our power hitter, but he also struck out a lot. It was all or nothing with Manny Ramirez, And plus you had his antics, going to the bathroom inside the Green Monster in between innings and things like that. Hence the idiot nickname.
What they call it, Manny being Manny, wasn't that?
Yeah, Manny being Manny, exactly. So we had a lot of but the sports writers had a field day with this. But, the magic in 04 was just unbelievable. To live during that time, there was a sign on one of the expressways. It was, for some reason, it's been there for years. It's on Sturrow Drive right outside Fenway Park. It says reverse curve coming up when you're getting off the highway. And somebody, the night they won it, spray painted reverse the curse on the sign. They left it there for weeks because that's how incredible the World Series was. So the argument could be made: greatest team ever. It's going to be right up there. I think.
Time out 1 second. Let me get the pup.
The player seems to.
It's obvious Benny's canine cohort is not a Red Sox fan. So
I guess so. But yeah. So I mean, to me, 2004 was a magical year. Greatest comeback. I don't know if you'll ever see that again.
Probably not. Nope. I mean, there's a couple of numbers we're going to talk about tonight that we'll never see again.
Yeah.
But that's, like I said, when Benny and I were bouncing back and forth because he said, obviously the 98 Yankees always get a lot of praise, and then 66 and 27, and I guess 39 just kind of slipped through the cracks.
Yeah.
But
go ahead,
I'm
Benny. Curious, Dan, you have the 39 first, and I have the 27. It was really, really close. Actually, I had the 39 first until I actually looked at a couple of more metrics, and then I changed it. Great stuff.
39. Try to pull it up here.
Yeah, 39 was, that was obviously, Bill Dickey, Joe DiMaggio, Joe Gordon. But I think it's important to note for 39, and this is kind of what we were going back and forth on, to this day. You're coming up on 100 years ago. It won't be too long. That was 100 years ago.
Wow.
And they still have the greatest run differential, or excuse me. Excuse me. The run differential. I was right. Of any team, they outscored their opponents. They were plus 411 for that series.
That's close. It's like over 2.5 runs a game. That's unbelievable.
Exactly. And if you look at metrics, and this is where we were going to get into I've got a nice little bit for actual like analytics math. Benny and I both being big numbers guys. It's not just that they were winning by almost 3 runs a game.
Right.
It's that you look at who they were playing. They were batting against some of the greatest pitchers of their generation. They were throwing to some of the greatest batters around. Roughing, and obviously Lefty Gomez was on that team.
Yeah, all Hall of Famers. Yep.
Yeah, they have five Hall of Famers, numerous All-Stars. It's hard to argue. Yes, obviously 27, Babe and all that. But when you look at what they did in 39, and this is, as an Orioles fan praising the Yankees, they hit records. It's like DiMaggio's hitting streak. There's things that you'll just never see. Nobody is ever going to get 412. 411 will stand forever.
What? Real quickly, Joe DiMaggio. What year was he in when he went in 39? Do we know?
What do you mean? What year?
What? Yeah. Was he a rookie? Was he? How many years into the league was he? Because 39 seems. I don't know.
That was I want to say 35 was his rookie season. So
he's only 4 years in.
DiMaggio was 36 was his rookie season.
There you go.
His fourth year.
Okay.
And Garrett only played.
Right.
I think Garrett had 28 at bats that year. In 39.
That's incredible. The
but
stats
you figure 30. He was pretty much until his not injury. What was it that shortened his 43? The war, but after 43,
right?
When because he had the gap, but pretty much he was an all-star every year he played.
Sure.
So he only had 36 was a shorter season, but he was still, everybody knew it going in.
Yeah, some of these guys, Red Ruffing, look at that. Look at those numbers. 21 and 7 on the year. 20 game winners back then.
And Herb Panic, the two top stars are Hall of Famers.
39. DiMaggio was MVP in 39.
Yep.
So that was
hit 381.
Yeah.
Yep. 126 ribbies. Yeah.
I'll tell you, because Dan is right that the highest run differential 411. The best ERA was 3.31. So they scored 967 runs. The Red Sox were the second at 890, but runs allowed only 556.
Wow.
And the second place was the Cleveland Indians, 700. So it wasn't even close. Now, and their team ERA was 3.31. Second place was Cleveland at 4.08, and they led the league in home runs with 162.
Wow.
And I guess the second place was Boston at 164. The reason why I chose the 27, and up until like an hour before the show, I had the 39 Yankees number 1. But then I looked at one more stat, and what it was, and then, the same thing with the 27 Yankees. Of course, Murderers Row. You got Lou Gehrig was the MVP that year, Hall of Fame. Tony Lazzeri, Hall of Fame. Babe Ruth, Earl Combs, and then the first 2 starters, Wade Hoyt and Herb Panic. So you had 6 Hall of Famers, and their run differential wasn't quite as much, 371.
Right.
Close though. I mean, to the 39 Yankees. Their team ERA was 3.20. Second was the White Sox, 3.91. But the stat that nudged me to push them number one was they had 158 home runs.
Yeah.
And the second place team was the Philadelphia Athletics with 56.
Wow.
So they out-homered like any two teams combined. So that was that kind of nudged me between. I mean, it's so close.
I mean, what pops out of me is Babe Ruth, 60 home runs, 164 RBIs. I mean, that's insane.
Babe Ruth had more home runs that year than the entire second closest team.
I believe it with numbers like that.
Yeah.
But can you imagine, like, Babe hit 164 runs,
that's
and
crazy.
that wasn't even the highest on the team. And you have a guy like Bob Musial, who was a great hitter, hit 337, which could win a batting title almost any year, and he was in fourth place on his own team. That's how good they were.
Well, look at Gehrig with 173 RBIs. That's insane.
It's insane.
I mean, you look at
which I think I mentioned it a couple shows ago. His RBI total is even more impressive when you figure 60 of his at bats were with empty bases because he batted after Babe Ruth.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I mean, and then I'm looking at the pitching: Hoyt with 22 wins, Pennick with 19, Sharker with 18. I mean, those are serious wins for pitchers.
And their quote unquote closer, Wilcie Moore, relief, had 19 wins.
That's insane.
So you had a 20, 22, and two 19s and an 18. I mean, the best, the only team I can think of with a better pitching staff.
So Wilcie Moore, you got Wilcie Moore. He was the closer. He had 12 saves on the season or during the series?
No, for the season. Keep in mind, back then a save really wasn't a thing because these guys are throwing complete games. It's not there was no such thing as a pitch count.
Right.
That'd be my question for these guys, the 27 Yankees. Like, obviously you had pitchers throw complete games, but if somebody came in for a save, what was what is it now? Like anything more than 4.5 runs or something like that, it's not considered a save or something like that. So these guys coming in, looking at these RBIs and these run differentials, they must have been up like 10-2 every game. And there's no save really there.
Yeah, I something that I wanted to note with the 39 Yankees, their biggest loss of the year was they to the Phillies. They lost, or excuse me, to Philadelphia. They lost 7-1. Their biggest win differential was against Detroit, and they won 22-2. And they had a dozen games at least where they were winning by at least 12 to 15 runs. So you figure you get 411, like Benny said, that's almost three runs a game. And that's in a season you lost. They lost 45 times and tied once. So they were 411 with 46 games that they didn't end up with a higher run total.
That is absolutely insane. I mean, I'm just like I wonder if they've ever blown any leads. They're up 15-0 and they just barely win.
And I have to say it's also kind of a 39 gets a soft spot because that was Gehrig's last year. Granted, he only played in 8 games that season.
Right.
Hit 4 hits and 1 RBI, but still, that moment of his last at bat at a Yankee was in 39. So that gets a bonus point there.
Unbelievable. Some of these.
So the 98 team that was, I think, 114 and 48 doesn't even make my top. I mean, I put them behind probably the Big Red Machine.
Sure.
Yeah, I had them behind the 75 Reds.
75 Reds. Yeah, that's a big one.
Well, that's which is a phenomenal team.
Now, 75, is that when Fisk hit the home run? Was that 75?
Yeah.
Yeah, with 75, right? Against Morgan and Joe Morgan and all those guys.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That was game 6 and we lost in game 7 or something like that.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
You figure they had, Morgan, Bench, Perez, Ken Griffey Sr., of course, Pete Rose.
Yep. Yeah, they had a lot of Hall of Famers, or obviously not Pete Rose, but
a lot of Hall of Famers and one travesty of his baseball history.
Yeah, unbelievable. So let's talk a little bit more here. I'm going through this tax bracket again.
Well, if I may,
go ahead, jump in.
I wanted to get actual numbers. And Benny, whenever he and I are talking, we're always talking numbers. And you've seen some of the write-ups Benny sends out, like clearly numbers. There's a metric that is used a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with the ELO numbers, ELO. It's analytics. What they do is it's a ridiculous, looks like something you'd see on a chalkboard in the back of a calculus class. This algorithm, and it breaks down every possible metric to a number, win, loss, home, away, who's playing. It creates a score. So like, for example, but the cool thing about it is it's always a zero balance. So like if the Yankees beat the Red Sox and the ELO score calculates that as 10, then the Yankees are now plus 10, the Red Sox are minus 10. So the entire season, and that allows the equation to transfer over to the following year when there's, to calculate players and all that. I've quoted it before because they've broken it down with stats at the 50th anniversary of the Super Bowl, or excuse me, Super Bowl 50, not the 50th anniversary, Super Bowl 50. CBS Sports and USA Today did a big write-up on the breakdown and calculated that the 91 Redskins were the best team to ever win a Super Bowl because of who they played, strength of schedule, all this shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
The point I wanted to make with that is they did a breakdown a couple years ago. This was in 2018 of Todd. Now, granted, I'm not saying, if you want to say anybody from 2019 on, but mathematically they broke down the best teams in history. And what they ended up doing was they assigned the best team from each team, like, the best Yankees team, the best Red Sox team. And then they did a score, and the best team mathematically that they calculated was the 39 Yankees.
Okay.
Had an ELO score of 1623, and they were the first of all time. The second, according to the ELO math, was the 1906 Cubs, which, that was, all the records that they broke. And then number 3, Benny, that's where you come back in, was your 30, or excuse me, the 27 Yankees.
Right.
And then it goes to the 1909 Pirates were 4, and it breaks down from there. What's interesting is if you Google best teams of all time, the 75 Reds, the 70 Orioles, they all show up top 3, top 5, pretty much every list.
And that's based on that ELO metric?
Correct. When you do the ELO score, the 1970 Orioles are mathematically the 19th highest score that they ELO calculated. Wow. The 19 – wait, let me make sure I get these numbers right. Where is it? The 1975 Reds actually weren't the highest scoring Reds team. That was 1976.
Oh, wow.
And the 1976 Reds were only the 23rd best team. So it was really, when you get the emotion out of it, it really is kind of interesting to break it down for you.
Now, where were those metrics back then?
Right. Well, I think it's funny, all the talk we had about we were talking about the Red Sox earlier. Right. According to the ELO score, the 1912 Red Sox were actually the statistically best, mathematically, I should say, best Red Sox team according to ELO, and they weren't even top 40. Wow. The 1912 Red Sox were the 46th highest score. So it's really like it's what Benny and I were talking about. I kind of want to, whatever, because we're both math guys. Like I could prove mathematically that the 39 Yankees were better than 27. So yeah.
Is there a place where you can see how the calculation is done?
Yeah, I can forward you that.
It sounds like a movie, Good Will Hunting, that was filmed in Boston. The guys on the chalkboard.
Get that blackboard that's like 1,000 feet long.
Right. And if anybody cares, just for humor's sake, the mathematically, according to the ELO score, the worst team to have ever played professional baseball was the 1904 Washington Senators.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder
who are now the Minnesota Twins. So sorry to Twins fans out there.
The Twinkies are upset now.
What was I thought the Cleveland Spiders, like from a pure one-loss perspective, was the worst. Like in the 1890s.
Cleveland.
You figure there's some teams. The Red Stockings, the St. Louis Browns. There's teams that don't exist anymore that were on the metric. So,
wow. So I have to check that out. It's called the ELO metric system.
Yeah, the ELO. It's an ELO score. I'll send you. I'll forward it to Benny. He can.
Yeah, that's neat. I'd like to take a look at that because that to me, I would just love to see how they calculate all that.
You'll probably never hear from me again because for the remainder of my lifetime I'll be holed away running the numbers.
It's funny. It's funny that they were able to break it down because the first time I ever saw an ELO score was basketball.
Oh wow!
And then they took it like, hey, based on basketball, we can expand these numbers to calculate football, baseball. You know, I'm sure they probably have soccer and other sports out there too. But
what do you know when this ELO system came out?
Actually, I do not know when it came out. I know the first time I saw it was about 10 years ago.
Okay, so it's been out for a few years at least.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, unbelievable.
Just out of curiosity, Dan, were the 71 Orioles from an ELO perspective higher than the 70?
No, 70 was the highest ELO score of any Baltimore team.
Because 71 was the year they had the 420 game winners, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But remember, in 71, they didn't win the series.
Okay. No, there you go. Okay.
Wow.
That's I'll argue that till the day I die that the 70 because they lost. That was when they got upset by the Pirates. The 71 Orioles are the best team to have never won a series.
Wow.
And it's got to be the best starting four of all time.
Yeah.
Easily.
So which one are we talking about? I'm sorry. I'm just looking at
71 Orioles.
Who are the 420 game winners for Baltimore?
McNally, Palmer, Cuellar, and Pat Dobson.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And good on you, Benny. Dobson he's the other guy. He's the one everyone always seems to forget.
Yeah. And the only reason why I remember him is because he came to the Yankees after that, I think.
Like what was it we said a couple shows ago? It's like trying to name the three tenors. Everybody always gets everybody always gets Pavarotti right off the bat. It's that other guy,
but like
who are the three tenors? Hold on. Placido Domingo.
There's one.
Pavarotti. And who was the third one?
Benny?
I don't know. I think he was in Mr. Deeds.
Jose Carreras.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the other guy, the one that everybody always gets Domingo and Pavarotti.
It's funny because I saw Andrea Bocelli in New York City a few years back, so I always thought maybe he was one of the three tenors, but it's just like, wow, unbelievable. So real quick, let's talk about my beloved Red Sox again. Let's go back to '86.
Yeah,
for a moment. What a lackluster year that was. I told you the story about how I saw the Roger Clemens game, 20 strikeouts. You get a ticket for a game later on in the season, and I get one. It's that random Saturday game against Toronto, and it's that game where they clinched the American League Eastern Division, and we were riding that wave all the way against the Angels, and we almost didn't get to the World Series that year because I think they were 1 out away, the Angels, and Gene Mauch decided to switch pitchers. Dave Henderson gets up and hits a home run. And next thing you know, that just the wheels come falling off on the Angels. And then we go ahead and win Game 7, and we go on to play the Mets, in the World Series. And, that World Series was actually a weird element to that was weather was a factor in that series. If you guys remember, if you have any interest in that, the weather, what happened is I want to say the game that we lost with the Bill Buckner, the following game was rained out. They ended up playing back-to-back games. It was a weird scenario with the ending of that series. And we all talk about Bill Buckner. Why was he in the game? If he was hobbled by a bad foot and all that. And John McNamara had an interview back in 2011 where he had stated that the reason that he left Buckner in was because that was his only good first baseman. They had a backup by the name of Dave Stapleton. His nickname was called Shaky. So you're not going to put him in a situation.
I like when you have Kurt Bleffrig on the old Orioles was Clank.
Yeah,
and then you had Dick Stewart on the Pirates was Dr. Strange Glove. Yeah, when you have nicknames like that, you probably want to keep them off the field.
Yep. And some of the things that I was knowing for the '86 team that I forgot, and we were talking about this too. Reggie Jackson played for the Angels then. He was going around. He had these weird stints. 1 year with Oakland, 2 years with the Angels, and I'm watching some of these old videos, and there's Reggie Jackson striking out. He wasn't Mr. October then, unfortunately. But Oil Can Boyd, obviously Clemens, Cy Young MVP, 24-4, 2.48. Just some of the stuff that came out of that game was just the heartbreak is the number one thing that Boston fans will always remember.
I tell you what, Joe,
the one strike away. Never mind the one out away. We were one strike away. And Bob Stanley was the pitcher, and I knew he was out of gas. Everybody did, but we were like, you just get one more strike and this thing's over. And it didn't happen. So, that's a heartbreak. But they finished. I want to say they didn't have a great record, I don't think. I'm trying to find their record. Their record wasn't stellar in 86.
No, it was
95 and 60. That's not even a wild card nowadays. They were 5.5 games over the Yankees, who at that time, the Yankees were they were staggering a little bit in the mid 80s, weren't they?
Yes.
They weren't doing too well. I think Detroit had a better record than them at one point. I remember
they didn't
Tigers
get
were the team
back into the postseason until 90, 95, I think.
Yeah, when they got Clemens.
Right.
But yeah, that's to me, I'm not. We talk about the greatest teams. I say they're the greatest teams because I lived through it. On paper, statistic wise, no, obviously they weren't the greatest team out there. But to live through that, to me, there's that emotional element of that. I'm sure Dan, Baltimore Orioles, you had to have witnessed some magic somewhere down the line with that team.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you figure they won the World Series when I was very young, and obviously, I lived in Maryland and was at the 21-31 game. I went to, in the 90s with, I mentioned him before when they brought in like Geronimo Barreau and Roberto Alomar, and they had that run 3 of 4 years or 2 and 3 years they were in the ALCS. And if it wasn't for just as damn good as the Yankees and some of the other American League teams, the Indians, the early 90s Indians, they would, well, mid 90s, I should say 97, they never, like, they couldn't quite get over that hump. It's like the whole bit with, I hate to change sports, but everybody always points out the Packers. They had a 25-year run with 2 of the greatest quarterbacks, arguably to have ever played. And they only won 2 Super Bowls because there was just so many other teams who, when you look at baseball, I mean, how many good American League teams were there in the late 90s, early 2000s when the Yankees won 5 World Series? Was it Benny 5 and 7 they won, including the 3 in a row?
They were the powerhouse. They were.
How many people just couldn't quite get over the hump because the Yankees were that much better?
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the things I remember in 2004. Cowboy up, Zimmer down. When Pedro tossed Don Zimmer off to the side there.
Yeah. And then of course what was it? 90? Was it 99, Benny? The Subway Series? When they played the Mets?
Was that 90? I think it was 2000, wasn't it?
2000. Yeah, Piazza got beamed by Clemens, right?
Yeah.
Like remember that? I remember that. Yep.
Oh, well, I don't know. You're not going to top Clemens throwing the bat back at him, saying he thought it was the ball.
Right.
Yeah, that was a great series. The Yankees ended up winning that series, right?
They did, yeah.
Yeah, that was part of their three-peat.
Yep, that's right. So so they were dominant at that time. But does free agency play a role in all this after that? Because you don't see these dominating teams anymore like we used to see. Like, are you ever going to get a 39 Yankees team again, or a 27 Murderers Row Yankees team ever again?
Well, I mean, the 39 Yankees, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was their 4th of 4 championships. And then from 49 to 53, which was Casey Stengel's first 5 years as manager of the Yankees, they won the World Championship 5 years in a row.
Wow.
I don't think we'll ever see that again. I mean, first of all, you have all the levels of playoff that you didn't have back then. All you had to do is when you're the AL or the NL, you're in the World Series, then you got to win 4 games. Now you got to win like 11.
Yep. My thing is, can you imagine having 4 20-game winners on one team nowadays?
Yeah, that'll never happen again.
I mean, I don't think there's a payroll big enough for that, unless it's something very obscure.
It's not even that. You're going to be hard pressed to get 2 20-game winners just because of how often starters, I mean, with bullpen games and starters getting pulled in the 4th or 5th inning when the game's tied,
What are they getting? 32 starts now, Dan?
What's that?
Are they getting 32 starts a year?
Give or take, yeah.
Yes, I mean you only have 32 possible decisions, and
right. But I mean, you figure how many when you go back to like the 4 20-game winners, it takes like a Jim Palmer or somebody like that. How many of those games was the game tied in the 6th or 7th inning?
Right. Yeah.
And he stayed on to pitch the ending. Now 4th or 5th inning, games tied, your starter's coming out. Yeah. So that's a win that he could have had if he had stayed in. That's gone. You're never going to get. I doubt you'll see that many 20-25 game winners again.
That would be a very interesting metric, though. If you looked at say in the 60s and the 70s, the percentage of decisions as a percentage of starts,
right,
to now, I would think that had a significantly drop.
Probably, I would say, yeah.
They were getting 40 starts a year, and if they were throwing 25 complete games, now you already have 25 decisions, win or lost, and out of those 15, say you got another 7 or 8, now you have 32 decisions. Now you're only getting 32 starts.
I think money plays a huge factor in all this because everyone's trying to protect their investment. So, like Dan, you're saying, they're only going 5 or 6 innings.
Right.
When before, we would talk about pitch count. I mean, we don't even talk about pitch count anymore. They go by innings.
Right. But I mean, to give you an idea, Cellular had in 1970, he had 21 complete games.
Wow.
Right. This season that just ended a few months ago, the league leader in complete games was Jordan Lyles in Kansas City with 3.
Wow.
3 complete games.
3. And he led the American League in complete games. And so, if you're not throwing, I'm not saying you got to throw 21 complete games to get 20 wins, but like I said, how many of those games and pitch, are you seeing starters pulled in the 4th or 5th inning, no decisions? That's why it breaks my heart when one of the saddest stats in baseball history is that Nolan Ryan never won a Cy Young because Cy Young voters have always favored winning records, and he spent 70% of his career on losing teams. Yeah. Wow. You're leading the league in strikeouts. Your ERA is near the top. You're the most dominant pitcher, and you have 17 no decisions that year. You're 4-11 as a starter. Like, you got worse run support in the majors. Like, you're never going to get it.
Yeah. I don't think we'll ever see that. That'd be amazing if we did, though, on a random whim.
You think about it. You have to go back to 2011 with James Shields in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
You find a pitcher with double-digit complete games again.
Unbelievable.
And his was only 11. But then, like Benny was saying, you not that far back, go back to the 70s and 80s, and you look at, I'll throw a few random numbers out there. Danny McClain, 1968, 28 complete games. Juan Marshall, 30 complete games. Fergie Jennings, 1971, 30 complete games.
I think the current career, for active players, the current career leader, I think, is Adam Wainwright of the Cardinals, and I think he has 26 in his whole 19-year career. These guys are doing that every season.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's no wonder though. For the most part, I mean, Seaver, Bob Gibson, all those guys, Marichal,
right?
They went season after season. Ryan never had an arm injury, yet these guys like Ohtani now is on the second. Tommy John, Jacob deGrom, who's the poster boy for Vagisil, he's on his second. I mean, what's and if anything, the nutritional science is much better now. Conditioning is light years better. Yeah, what's the difference?
I think to me, I think the pitchers back then, you talk about the Seavers and all those guys, they had a variety of pitches to choose from. Now I think it's 1 or 2. It's fastball. And you don't see that illustrious curveball anymore.
It's also you look at as an Orioles fan watching the Mountains having Tommy John surgery and they don't expect him to play at all next year.
Yeah.
He's a closer. Maybe he plays three on a bad time. You might keep him in for four or 5 outs, but usually he's only in for 1 inning. Yeah. But he's throwing 100+ mile-an-hour fastballs, or he's got that ridiculous breaker. You know. That's it. Like you get closers having
It's one
Tommy
or
John
two.
surgery
Yeah.
because they throw the fastball or they've got a sinker, or
Right.
you've got maybe. I mean, honestly, there's a couple closers out there that don't have a dominant fastball.
No.
They'll just kill you with a sinker or a curve or something. But you throw the same pitch. You know, it wouldn't take much, like you said. 70 Orioles between the 420 game winners. You got 25 different pitches. I mean,
Sure.
Jim Palmer threw everything.
Right.
He had a sinker, he had a slider, he had a curve, he had a changeup. You saw slurves, you saw,
And
different stuff back
they
then.
They didn't have pitch counts back then either.
Right.
They would come out. How you feeling? I can go another inning.
Well,
Okay.
I got the arm is literally duct taped on. Like, I got this, boss.
The best one was Tim McCarver when he'd go out to the mound and Bob Gibson would say, "The only thing you know about hitting is you're not very good at it. Like, get the hell out of here."
I will say, though, you talk about to combine both of them, complete games and records. You want to talk about a record that'll never, ever get broken again. Cy Young has the record. He pitched 749 complete games in his career.
Oh, my God. That's that's insane.
Yeah.
And then Benny, going back to what you said, does that have something to do with nutrition and the foods they ate back then? Because there were not many processed foods back in those days as there are now.
But we know so much more about nutrition. Like these guys are taking supplements and things like that, which, they never took back then. I honestly think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, back when we were kids, when I was a kid, we weren't allowed to throw a curveball because, the coach would say it's going to damage your arm.
Exactly.
Where I think these 11, 12-year-old kids now, they're throwing curveballs and they're setting themselves up for failure in the future.
Yeah,
right.
Well, look at how many. Opinion. I mean, I don't know if you all follow like college, really, or minor leagues. You got 18, 19-year-old kids in the minor leagues or in college having Tommy John surgery but they're like Benny said, they're 19 years old and they've thrown 10,000 curveballs in their life.
But Tommy John surgery nowadays is nothing compared to what it was career ending back in the day.
It was, but even so, I mean, you'll never rebuild it to what it was.
No.
When you have guys like Benny said, you got guys 3-4 deep, multiple surgeries on their elbow or their shoulder. By the time you're 25, it hurts to reach for the milk. Like,
right.
But I think too, you'd never want to accuse people of anything they haven't been convicted of, except Barry Bonds. I don't care how many negative tests he's had. That man was juiced out of his mind. But one of the major side effects of most performance enhancing supplements and drugs is wear and tear on soft tissue.
Oh, yeah,
you might have larger muscles, but your joints, tendons, and nerve endings in and around joints are predominantly more injury prone.
Well, I can attest to that because that'll go back to the infamous Nomar Garcia-Parra appearing on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Looked like he just stepped out of a bodybuilding contest, and it was shortly thereafter he had a wrist injury that he couldn't shake.
Yeah,
and they attributed that to his demise because he couldn't do all the stuff he was taking, which he knew he was taking something. He couldn't get over that wrist injury, and that's what really ultimately ended his career. And it's like, what happened? Like, he was in his heyday, and here he is, the poster boy for Sports Illustrated, and he's marrying Mia Hamm and all that stuff, and living the big life, and boom. So yeah, it definitely the steroids and everything.
Benny and I are both wrestling guys. Remember the Royal Rumble? Not 15 years ago. Vince McMahon comes out because they apparently botched. Well, they say they botched it, but that's up for debate whether or not that's scripted. But he steps into the ring to yell at Batista and John Cena, tears both his quads. 6 months before he was on the cover of Men's Fitness, jacked out of his mind. Look at me at 60. I'm so
Yeah, there's obviously the steroid era in wrestling. I mean, it obviously shortened a lot of careers as well as lives.
Yeah, a lot of lives.
And that takes me back, not to switch gears with wrestling, but it takes me back to that gym in where was it, Tampa or whatever, where it was Road Warrior Animal and Mr. Perfect. They all worked out at the same gym and they were getting the same juice from the same guy, and they all died. Bulldog, everybody.
Yeah, Bulldog.
Davey Boy Smith. They were all working out this one gym, and
if you remember the same doctor that was caught up after the Chris Benoit incident.
Oh, yeah.
Killed himself and his family. That same doctor had prescribed drugs to numerous people that had either died or were dead within a year or two. And then others like William Regal and people like that ended up having to go to rehab because it's like, oh shit, you're getting 6 month steroid prescriptions every couple weeks. Like there's clearly something wrong with you.
Oh yeah. Look at Vince McMahon. I think he was on something as well.
Yeah,
I look at his transformation. And have you seen him lately?
Yeah.
At UFC and all that, those videos come. He looks like he's
old
and decrepit, and he is deteriorating.
And I'll say it about McGuire and Barry Bonds is obviously the biggest example.
Oh, Barry Bonds,
no one, period. I don't care how many positive tests you have. Canseco said it in his book. Who would have thought he'd end up being the bastion of common sense in baseball? But when no one puts on 20 plus pounds of muscle in one off season after the age of 30 without chemical help, it does not happen.
Well, how does your head size and your shoe size grow in your late 30s?
I know.
At least McGuire just got naturally bigger. Barry Bonds had to get a bigger batting helmet 3 of his last 5 years.
You see those body transformations, you're like, nah, no way.
Go find a trading card of Barry Bonds on the Pirates or young Sammy Sosa.
There's that picture.
Remember Sammy Sosa back when he used to be black? You know, have you seen him recently?
No, I haven't.
He's got. I mean, I understand. He claims it's medical, but so did Michael Jackson. But he's got that transformation going for him. At least he learned English now. Remember, he forgot how to speak English when he was before Congress.
But he was before he went with when he was at the White Sox, he was like a 12 homer a year guy.
Yeah.
All of a sudden now he's hitting 65.
Then he came to Baltimore and got caught using corked bats.
Yeah. But my biggest question in regards to steroids with baseball players is they have a God-given talent. I mean, obviously hitting a 95, 100 mile an hour fastball is a God-given talent. You can't teach someone to do that. And do steroids improve your vision with that? I understand the power aspect of it and all,
right?
But does it really improve your vision where you can hit more home runs or drive in more runs?
That's always, you always hear that defense when they talk about Barry Bonds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Steroids is not a magic pill. I can't, like someone like me, I can't take steroids and then go hit 50 home runs. Steroids build on something natural. I mean, you look at guys like Jay Cutler when he was, really changed the game in the Mr. Universe competitions, Coleman and now Big Ramey and those guys.
Right.
They'll tell you still putting 10 hours a day plus in the gym.
Oh,
You're still at bat. You still have to have that. Barry Bonds, Mark McGuire, these, who is it? Teixeira,
they're ball players.
Rafael
They're ball players.
You have to have that hand-eye. Steroids won't give you that hand-eye coordination.
That's what I'm saying.
What it will do, however, it will increase your bat speed just because of the strength of your arms, and it will increase power. Steroids makes a pop fly to the outfield a home run.
Yeah,
you still have to hit the ball.
Right.
But you're hitting a home run or you're hitting it harder to where it's farther out and it's going over the left fielder's head instead of being caught. So, yes, to say you take steroids and poof, you're instantly better. If that was the case, everybody'd be hitting 70 home runs a year.
That's a great, you got a guy like Sosa, you got a guy like Palmeiro who were fairly good contact hitters who hit, not a great average, but hit for a decent average. Now a lot of these fly balls to the outfield, they're translating to home runs. That's why I think if like a Dave Kingman ever took steroids, and he'd still strike out 900 times a year, but then the 40 home runs he hit instead of going 800 feet, they went 850. I don't think it would have changed him.
Right.
Somebody Boggs one year didn't he hit like 26 home runs where he never hit anything close to that?
If we can kind of circle back to what we started with talking about with the best teams ever, that's something that's also gets lost in history when you look at, any really, especially dead ball era, but any team before the 1930s when they started really redesigning ballparks, it didn't take much. Boston, great example. The center field wall at the old Boston ballpark was almost 600 feet.
Yeah.
From home plate. You're not going to hit a home run.
Right.
Yeah,
it was insane.
Cartoon Casey at the bat's not hitting a home run in that stadium.
Well, you could fast forward now to Yankee Stadium and what is it? Right field is like it's ridiculous. It's what 302 or something like straight. It's ridiculous.
Baltimore is a great example. This is the first season with the new Camden Yards layout where they pushed the right field wall back and raised it, kind of creating like a mini monster. And they took some seats out, but they added a bleacher section. And home runs in the right field section of Camden Yards plummeted from the last 10-year average because all of a sudden you're that extra. Now it's not much, but you add an extra. How many highlights have you guys seen where the outfielders jumping and just catching the ball at the wall, like just robbing the home run? If that wall's 10 feet further back, he doesn't have to do that.
Right, exactly.
You put the ball 30 feet back, you're taking 25, 30 home runs a year. Poof, gone.
Yeah, you're making highlight reels now. That's what's happening. And obviously offense creates wins or runs, but it also puts butts in seats. They want to see the home run. They want to see all that stuff. So
and it's also the idea of switch hitting. How many what there's only the you can count on one hand the number of permanent switch hitters in the leagues now.
It's crazy.
And given that only a small percentage of the population is left-handed, you want that right field wall further back.
Exactly.
You want to make it harder for people batting, especially pitchers, the right on right matchup.
Yeah.
You want to make that harder. I get it. I do. That's one of the things that often gets lost in history with some of these teams in the 20s. I mean, granted, the Yankees probably not so much because they had the money, but some of the smaller market teams might play an entire ball game with 4 baseballs.
Yeah.
Whereas the Yankees up the street or use 50. Of course, you're going to get better hitting when you've got fresher baseballs.
Yeah, that takes you back to the home run years with McGuire and Sosa and all that. They tried to get off the steroid thing, but they were saying, "Oh, the balls were juiced now." Something's wrong with the baseballs. Like, really? Okay, let's, and next they're appearing before Congress lying their asses off.
And it's funny, the history major in me, that year, Congress spent more time in session on baseball than they did on healthcare. Was it healthcare, Medicaid, and Social Security combined? Yeah. So.
And what was the reasoning all behind that?
The idea is at the time, it's the same thing with the NFL. When they got involved with the Redskins was baseball had tax breaks. So if you're a corrupt organization that's getting tax money, the IRS has to get and therefore the government has to get involved to make sure you're clean. Plus, you want to, with the President Council on Fitness and all that shit, you don't want America's pastime to be crooked and drug filled.
The American Council on Fitness.
Remember when Reagan brought out Arnold Schwarzenegger? Come on, kids.
I remember that.
Look at me. I'm all natural. Take Hulk Hogan. Take your vitamins and drink some orange juice. And you can look like me.
No way was he all natural. Those guys were on something. I mean, that was just everywhere. Venice Beach, all those guys.
Right. Well, that's why I said I grew up. Take your vitamins, say your prayers, and train hard.
We just didn't know what vitamins they were talking about.
What was it Jesse Ventura said once in an interview? I'd hear Hogan say, "Take your vitamins," and my first question is, the oral or injectable ones?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Jesse's a prime example because the steroids did him